أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين واللعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما الحياة الدنيا إلا لهو ولعب وإن الدار الآخرة لهي الحيوان لو كانوا يعلمون. صلوات على محمد. This is the first in a series of 5 majlises, inshallah, that we have entitled Glimpses of the Real World. The verse of the Quran that I have had the honor of reciting before you right now is from Surah Al-Ankabut, which is chapter 29 of the Quran, verse 64. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. And what is the life of this world except a pastime and a game? What is the life of this world except an idle pastime and a play? وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. But the home that is in the hereafter, that is real life. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew. Salawat ala Muhammad. When you look at the verse with a little more attention, you see that based on how Allah ends the verse, there is an expression of regret and remorse. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew. We normally express this sort of a remorse or regret when something is right beneath our feet, but we do not see it. When something is right besides us, but we do not see it. For example, if I was standing on the ground and just below my feet there was a pot of gold, you would say, if only he knew. If only he knew. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ. The home that is in the hereafter, that is real life. لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew. From this we understand that what Allah is trying to tell us, that the life that is actually the real life is right within your grasp and not beyond your reach, but you do not see it. And that is why you will see that the Quran again and again refers to this world as a world of illusion. There are some ahadith that also point in this direction, but if we don't understand what we mean by saying this world is a world of illusion, then it could mislead us. For example, the famous hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, where he says, "An-nasu niyamun idha matu intabahu." People are asleep. When they die, they wake up. Another very similar saying you will find in Nahjul Balagha, when you look at the last part of Nahjul Balagha where the sayings are. If you look at saying number 64, you will see that he says, the people of this world are like travelers who are being carried while they are asleep. So some Muslim thinkers have come up with the idea that the whole experience of life is actually an illusion. That nothing is really happening. That because everything is on the basis of predestination, whatever we experience is simply a figment of Allah's imagination. Na'udhu billah. And they produce these traditions and these ayats of Quran to say that this is all a dream, it is an illusion, you are asleep. one day you will wake up and realize that nothing ever happened. Because there are ayats of Quran that say that on that day they will feel as if they had lived for only half a day or even less. Or they will feel as if they existed for only 1 hour or even less. So what is it that we mean from the perspective of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam when we say that this life is an illusion? What do we mean? What we mean is that the real world is actually present with us right now. We exist in that real world. But there is a veil that distorts and hides this real world from us. Either because the 5 senses of the human being are limited and therefore they cannot perceive it, or because of other reasons that we shall discuss inshallah in the nights to come. That this veil is dropped between us and the real world. And we shall refer to this veil as the veil of heedlessness, Ghita al-Ghaflah. So this is just setting the initial understanding that when we say this world is an illusion, because in the next 5 nights inshallah I will repeatedly say that this world that you think is real is not real. And the real world is something else. So whenever I say this world is not real, I do not mean it is something you are imagining, it doesn't really exist. What I mean is there is more to than what meets the eye. But there is a veil that stops us from seeing that real world. Now having understood this, we move on. We bring in another ayat of Quran to show that there is a real world that is much more alive than what we think. We think we are alive, and when people die we say they are dead. But as we shall see, it is actually we who are dead. Those who die are the ones who become alive. Surah Bani Israel, or Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 44. تُسَبِّحُ لَهُ السَّمَاوَاتُ السَّبْعُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَا فِيهِنَّ. The heavens, the 7 heavens glorify Allah, and the earth, and whatever is contained in them. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُ. And there is not a thing in it, in these 7 heavens and in this earth, there is not a thing in it but that it glorifies Allah and praises Him. But you do not understand their tasbih. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ, there is not a thing, إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ, it glorifies Allah. وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. You do not understand its tasbih. You think it is dead. It is not dead, it is alive. And if we bring this realization to our minds, and this is the point that I will be trying to convince you for the next 5 nights, that if we change our lives so that we go through life with this idea that everything around me is alive, then we will be more conscious of our surrounding, of our environment. And it will change how we behave in society. It will change how we behave as human beings. Supposing you lift a pebble, and from the pebble you hear the Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. How will you treat that pebble? Will you pluck a leaf from a tree if that leaf is doing tasbih of Allah? And then verse 45 after it. وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا. And when you recite the Quran, then we place a veil between you and those who do not believe in the hereafter. A hidden veil. Allah does not say when you recite the Quran, I place a veil between you and the kafirin, or between you and the mushrikeen, or between you and the munafiqeen. He says, I place a veil between you and those who do not believe in the real world. So there is a veil, and when one recites the Quran as it deserves to be recited, then that veil is lifted. And when one moves away from the Quran, then one is in the same, behind the same veil as the one who does not believe in the hereafter. The difference, of course, between the atheist and the monotheist is that even though both may not be able to see the real world, and both may be veiled from the real world, the atheist argues that if I can't see it, smell it, touch it, sense it with my 5 senses, then it doesn't exist. Whereas the believer says, the primary attribute of being a believer is to believe in the unseen. Even the Quran cannot guide you if you do not believe that there is a world that is unseen. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This Quran is a book, there is no doubt in it, a guide for the pious. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those who believe in the unseen. So belief in the unseen is primary. And unless one is willing to accept that there is a lot around me that is unseen, one cannot move beyond that. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُ. Now when you keep this in mind that everything is doing tasbih, now you open the Quran page after page and you will see everything around you is alive. You just don't see it. The Quran says the thunder is alive, the lightning is alive. When you hear thunder and lightning, it is doing tasbih of Allah. The Hadith says that when a person goes out to seek knowledge, religious knowledge, then the fish in the oceans and the wild beasts in the forests, they do istighfar for that person. This is animals. From Hadith we are told the days and the nights are alive. Every single day and every single night is alive. When you get up in the morning, the day speaks to you. Each one of you individually, the day says to you, Ana yawmun jadid, wa ana alayka shahid. I am a new day, and I shall be a witness over you. Therefore be careful of what you do in me today, because I shall testify for you or against you. وَلَن تَرَانِي بَعْدَ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ أَبَدًا. And you will never see me again after this. Then there is a footnote to that, a commentary to that, to explain that hadith, with another hadith, that says on the day of judgment, Allah will resurrect every single day that has passed in this world in the form of a human being. The Mondays shall come forward as human beings. The Tuesdays will come forward as human beings. The Wednesdays will come. And ahead of all them will be Yawmul Jum'ah. The Fridays will walk in front like a bridegroom. Kal arus, they will walk. And then the days will stand between heaven and hell. And as people pass on the Sirat, they will say, he did this on me. He did this in me. This is what I saw on this in me. So Hadith has a completely different picture. Everything that you think is non-tangible, non-real, Hadith says it is real. The days are real. The nights are real. The heavens are alive. In Surah Maryam, if you look at the last verse, it says, so the heavens did not weep over them, nor were they given any respite. That means the heavens can weep. The earth is alive. When you walk on the earth, it says, O son of Adam, O daughter of Adam, do not walk with me on pride. You will come into my embrace one day. When you take your dead to the cemetery, all those spots of the earth where nobody has been buried, they call out and say, bring him, if he is a believer. They pray to Allah, oh Allah, let him be buried where I am. Let him be buried where I am. Let me hold this body in my embrace. And if he is an enemy of God and an inmate of hellfire, then every spot of earth calls out, oh Allah, let him not be buried where I am. Let him not be buried where I am. And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala, he said, if you want to lead a virtuous life, then always live your life as if those two angels that are with you are two men walking on either side of you, day and night, like rajulain as-salihain, two righteous, pious, virtuous men. They are with you all the time. Be conscious of that fact all the time, and you will be ashamed to sin. Supposing this was a reality for us, then our behavior would be different, because we would say, if there are 100 people in this room, there are actually 300 people in this room, because besides every one of you, there are two. Now when you leave your home, how would you leave from your home if there were two pious people with you? How would you sit in the car? How would you come out of your car? How would you walk into the mosque? How would you go back to your family? How would you eat? How would you behave at work if there were two pious people constantly walking with you and they're looking at your face all the time? What is he looking at? What is he listening to? This is a reality. Then again we are told in Hadith that when a person is punished in the grave, except for insan and jinn, all the other creation of Allah can hear that azab. That is why sometimes if you keep an animal near a cemetery, you will see it will bolt and dart away from the grave, because it hears that adab. So again and again, when we look at Quran and Hadith, there is a reality and a world around us that we are blind to. That is the real world. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, if you take a pebble from a mosque, make sure you either bring the pebble back to the mosque or deposit it in another mosque, because that pebble is doing tasbih of Allah. If you take a pebble from a mosque, return it to the mosque or put it in another mosque, because that pebble is doing tasbih of Allah. It is Allah's mercy that He hides the tasbih of certain things from us. Otherwise we would not even be able to live a decent life. How would we wash the dirt off our body with water if the water was doing tasbih? So there is a different world around us that we need to awaken to. That is why the famous Sufi Maulana Rumi, in one of his poetry, in his Mathnavi, when he writes about this, he talks about how the world is alive. Then he concludes by saying, if you move away from this material world, you will hear an uproar of life in the universe. The whole world is alive. So much alive that you will realize how dead you are. Because in the real world, the staff of Musa becomes a serpent. In the real world, the ocean is alive, so when Musa commands it, it splits and becomes two walls of water. In the real world, when Dawood alayhi salam begins to sing the praise of his Lord, the mountains move from side to side and they do tasbih with him. This is Quran, not even Hadith. The mountains are alive. In the real world, when Dawood holds iron, it turns into wax in his hands. Because as we shall see in the later nights, that a lot that you see in this world is actually the opposite in the hereafter. In the real world, Sulaiman talks to Hudhud. In the real world, Sulaiman talks to ants. This is the real world. When the veil is lifted, it is very normal. It is not a miracle. In the real world, the winds are alive. They carry Sulaiman with his throne and his whole entourage. If you look at the heavens, you see the king on his palace with his army moving in mid-air. This is the real world, not the world that you see. In the real world, fire turns into a bed of rose for Ibrahim. In the real world, when the Habib of Allah points to the moon and tells it to split, it is alive, so it splits. In the real world, when Rasulullah lifts pebbles in his hands, the pebbles begin to do tasbih. So the pebbles are still doing tasbih today. What is missing is the hand of Al-Mustafa. If his hand was here, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. In the real world, the trees are alive. When the Prophet leans on a pillar, the pillar enjoys the presence of the Prophet. What is that pillar of Hannana in Masjid Nabawi? You know about it. When the Prophet moved away from it, and the pillar began missing the Prophet, it began crying. So you don't even have to limit yourself to the ahadith of the Shia scholars. Look at the Shia hadith, Sunni hadith, you will see the whole world is alive. It's a different world altogether. In the real world, the months are alive. If you look at Sahifa Sajjadiyya in the Wida of the month of Ramadan, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, when he bids farewell to the month of Ramadan, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, Assalamu alayka ya shahrullahi al-akbar. Peace be on you, O mighty month of Allah. Assalamu alayka wa ala laylatul qadr, allati hiya khayrun min alfi shahr. Peace be on you, O Ramadan, and on the night of Qadr, which is better than 1,000 months. Assalamu alayka ma ahrasana bil amsi ilayk, alayk, wa ma ashaddu shawqana ghadan ilayk. Peace be on you, O month of Ramadan. How much we feel the pain of losing you, and how much we yearn and long to see you again. So he's talking about these things, he's not just personifying them. He is telling us that these things are real. Everything is real. And that is why when you go to Hadith, you will see that when we talk about the hereafter, which is the real world, which is present even now, but you do not see it, everything is alive. The mizan is alive. The mizan on which your deeds are weighed, it has a tongue. And when the deeds are placed, it speaks where this person belongs. The sirat is alive. The heaven, the paradise, Jannat is alive. The fire of hell is alive. It says, Hal min mazid, Hal min mazid. Are there any more? Are there any more? It's also in Quran, not even Hadith. The fruits in heaven are alive, they talk. The throne on which the believers sit in paradise, that is alive as well. Everything in this world is alive. The only difference is that we live in a dimension where there is a veil, and that time-bound dimension stops us from seeing this real world. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In Surah Al-Ahzab, which is chapter 33 of the Quran, verse 72, Allah says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ. We offered this trust to be our representatives to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountains. فَأَبَيْنَا أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ إِنَّهُ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. And they refused to take this trust because they were afraid that they will not be able to fulfill it. But insan agreed to take this trust. Most surely he is unjust and ignorant. So Allah is saying that this trust that we have given you by making you our representative, do not think you are the only one who could have done this. We offered it to the heavens, we offered it to the earth, we offered it to the mountains, but they refused. That means they are alive, but you do not see it. In the Battle of Badr, after the battle was over, and some of the chiefs of the Quraysh were killed, including the father-in-law of Abu Sufyan and his brother-in-law and so on. The Prophet of Islam said, bring their bodies. There was a well in which they were going to throw the bodies. Once the bodies were brought, he started talking to them. He's talking to what? He's talking to the dead bodies. Have you found what your Lord promised you to be true? Do you now see what I was telling you? He's talking to the dead bodies. So we are told that the Caliph Umar al-Khattab was near the Prophet. He said to him, Ya Rasulullah, atukhatibu al-mawta? Are you talking to the dead people? Are they able to listen to you? They have perished. How is it that you're talking to people who are dead? He says to him, Sah ya ibn al-Khattab. Be quiet, son of Khattab. فَوَاللَّهِ لَسْتَ بِأَسْمَعَ مِنْهُمْ. You do not hear me any better than they do. They hear me even better than you do. You think they are dead. They hear me even better than you do. وَلَيْسَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ الْعَذَابِ عَلَى يَدِ الْمَلَائِكَ إِلَّا أَنْ أَدْبَرُ مِنْهُمْ. There is nothing now between them and the punishment and the adhab that is in the hands of the angels, except that the angels are waiting for me to move away. So what is it that the Prophet is seeing? He is seeing the angels standing with adhab waiting. He is talking to them. They don't understand it. The same thing happens again, much later on, in the Battle of Jamal. This time it is Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And after the battle, Allahumma salli ala... And after the battle, he walks around the battlefield. And then he first finds the body of Ka'ab. Ka'ab was a judge. He was a qadi in Basra. He was appointed a judge by the Caliph Umar and then the Caliph Uthman. And when the battle of Jamal took place, he stood up against Amir al-Mu'mineen and he gave his fatwa that you should fight against Ali. And his sons as well were killed in Jamal. So he was a high-ranking personality in the Battle of Jamal, besides Talha and Zubair and Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. So Imam Ali goes to the body of Ka'ab. He tells his companions, make him sit. It's a corpse. They take the dead body, they make it sit. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen speaks to him. Ya Ka'ab, قَدْ وَجَدْتُ مَا وَعَدَنِي رَبِّي. I have found what my Lord promised me. هَلْ وَجَدْتَ مَا وَعَدَكَ رَبُّكَ. Have you found what your Lord promised you? In other words, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is telling the people around them that you have to die before you see the real world. I see the real world even before I die. That is why قَدْ وَجَدْتُ مَا وَعَدَنِي رَبِّي. I have seen already what my Lord has promised me. Have you seen what your Lord has promised you? Then he walks around again. Then he finds the body of Talha. Make him sit. They make Talha sit. It's a dead body. They make the dead body sit. He talks to Talha. Oh Talha, I have found what my Lord promised me. Have you found what your Lord promised you? So we understand then, when we look at these examples after examples after examples, that it appears to us as if this is the real world. But there is a whole dimension to this universe that we are blind to. And one of our objectives in these lectures is to try and understand that if we accept that there is an unseen world, because that is a primary requirement of one who believes, and if we have sufficient evidence from the Quran and the Hadith that everything around us is alive, then how should that change us and affect how we lead our lives? And how should that influence us? Should we live our lives on the basis of what is limiting and what only our five senses can experience? Or should we live our lives like people who truly believe that there is a whole real world that is veiled from us? وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. That is your home, the abode in the hereafter. لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. That is real life. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew. And that is the point that we want to go to over the nights to come, inshallah. So when we talk about miracles and mu'jiza, what we begin to realize that when a prophet or when an imam is performing a miracle, they are not really doing something that is impossible. All they are doing is lifting the veil momentarily from us. And if we learn to lift this veil, then what appears to be miraculous no longer appears to be miraculous anymore. For example, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, when he takes pebbles in his hands and they begin to do tasbih of Allah, he is not making those pebbles do tasbih. Those pebbles are already doing tasbih. Even today when you step out, they are doing tasbih. He is lifting the veil momentarily from the eyes of people and from the ears of people so that they see the real world. That is the mu'jiza. The mu'jiza is his ability to temporarily strip that veil from your ears and eyes. When an imam points his fingers in front of his companion and says, "Look between my fingers," and the companion looks and he sees that instead of people doing tawaf of the Kaaba, there are pigs and apes doing tawaf, the imam is not changing them into pigs and apes. They are pigs and apes. But you do not see that because of the veil. You think they are human. All the imam is doing is he is lifting the veil. The mu'jiza is in the fact that he is lifting the veil, not that he is changing them. They have changed themselves. So the miracle is in the lifting of the veil. And that is why when you read the ahadith of how the world will change after the zuhur, inshaAllah, of Imam Sahib al-Zaman, ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, you see that we are told people will begin to practice telepathy. They will communicate just by reading people's thoughts. Bringing the dead back to life will become very common. People will be brought back to life from the dead very, very frequently. It will be a common thing. He will teach them the secrets of life and death. People will traverse into the outer regions of space. Space travel will become very common. This is all in hadith. That he will complete the intellect of insan and take the human species to a new level of evolution. Not physical, but intellectual and spiritual. And the Quran points to this as well. In Surah Al-Rahman. Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-ins. إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. O community of insan and jinn, if you are able to penetrate the outer regions of the heavens, then do so. But you will not be able to do so except with an authority, except with a sultan. That sultan is Imam Sahib al-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. La tanfuduna illa bi sultan. So when the sultan himself appears, he will show you how easy it is. And that is why you see that from the appearance of the Imam to his establishing a utopian state in the world, to Raj'at, to Yawmul Qiyamah, there is a natural sequence and transitions where he opens up the portals of the heavens, and this world logically and very obviously and understandably transitions into the day of judgment and into the hereafter. There are no surprises. Because in bringing human beings to a state of enlightenment and in taking human beings to the next level, he is not changing human beings from who they are. All he is doing is lifting the veil completely. He is teaching human beings how to become so conscious that they now perceive beyond their five senses. And in taking human beings to this level of enlightenment where there is no ghita al-ghaflah, where there is no veil of heedlessness, human beings become perfect. And then nothing is surprising. Today if somebody is brought back from the dead, back to life, it becomes a miracle. At that point it is no longer a miracle. So I want to simply stop here for today, and I want to just establish this as a baseline. That in order for us to understand everything else that we will discuss from tomorrow night onwards, inshallah, that what is the relationship between our actions and what happens in the real world? What is the relationship between what we see of ourselves physically with this limited vision and what the real world looks like and what we look like in the real world? What are the things that cause this veil to become thicker and more dense? And what are the things that lift this veil? And how should this knowledge then help us change how we lead our lives? And we will inshallah take this logically step by step in the coming nights, inshallah. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As you know, these nights that we are going through, that we call the Ashra Zainabiyya, these are the nights in which we mourn for the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, but in particular we mourn for the women folk and the ladies of the Ahlul Bayt. In the first 10, 12 nights of Muharram we cry for the men, for Abu Abdullah and the Shuhada of Karbala, and then in these nights we remember and pay our respects to the women. And last night we commemorated the wafat of the little daughter of Imam Hussein, Janab Sakina, and she in some books is also Ruqayya is most likely where the little daughter of Imam Hussein is buried. So in more likelihood her name was Ruqayya. You will see that in the proximity of where the haram of Ruqayya is to the palace of Yazid and the bazaar, it makes more sense that the prison was there rather than the maqbara where we have the shrine of Sakina. So Imam Hussein had an older daughter as well who was called Sakina. And Ruqayya was also sometimes lovingly called Sukaina, as the little Sakina. But within our culture and within the Ash'ar and in the Masaib and in the Nawhas that we have compiled in our Indo-Pak and Urdu-speaking community, she has come to be known as Sakina. When you look at the tragedy of Karbala, one of the things that is heart-wrenching but beautiful is that you can see the whole incident of Karbala from the eyes of different people again and again and again. You could talk about Karbala and narrate the whole incident of Ashura from the eyes of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But then you could describe the whole day again from the eyes of Janab Zainab alayhi salam. You could then describe the whole day again from the eyes of Abbas alayhi salam. And I want to use 1 or 2 nights to talk about the whole tragedy of Karbala from the eyes of Sakina alayhi salam, from this little girl's eyes, and how she saw the whole incident. You see, it is one thing to dash the hopes and to break the morale of an adult. And it is quite another thing to dash the hopes of a little girl. When a child is very young, a 3-4-year-old, they see things in a very different perspective. And so their hopes are raised to a much higher level. They have a lot more expectations from human beings because they've had less experiences of people being cruel to them. And there are a couple of things that Sakina alayhi salam had a lot of hope in. And inshallah I will talk about some of the different things tomorrow night or the day after. But tonight I want to talk about one of them, and then inshallah talk about another thing that Sakina alayhi salam had a lot of hope in tomorrow, and so on. One of the things as a little girl that she could not fathom and understand was why somebody would deny her water. This idea that somebody would say to her, you cannot have water, was hard to comprehend for the little girl. Because in the adab of human beings, the way Allah created us, we cannot sustain ourselves without water. Water is a primary need for all human beings. If you look at the planet as well, you will see wherever human beings established cities and towns, they always find where there is water, they stay there. Because water is life. Water is what we need to survive. And so while it may be embarrassing and ashaming to ask somebody for food, it is never embarrassing to ask somebody for water. You see, Imam Hussein alayhi salam does not feel ashamed to say to the enemies, can you not give, is there no father amongst you who can give a few drops to my asghar? Imam Hussein is not ashamed to say to Shimr, that when you slaughter an animal, you give them some water. I am the grandson of your prophet. Can you not give me some water? And so when we look at it from this perspective, we see that Sakina alayhi salam had a very different perspective. And one of her hopes was that water was something that should have been within her reach. And in the early stages of the tragedy, we see that she wants water for herself. But as time progresses, she is looking for the same water, but now for others. And time again, the cruelty of the whole incident is that time and time again, her hopes are dashed. We see the very first time that she is thirsty, the very first time she is in the khayma, and she hears all the other little children within the khayma crying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, thirst is killing us, thirst is killing us. She has this hope that if there is anyone who can bring water, it is my uncle Abbas. There is no way my Chacha Abbas will not get water from me. And so we see she goes out with her mashk to Abbas and says to her uncle Ammu Abbas, is there no way you can bring some water for your Sakina? Sakina is very thirsty. And when Abbas leaves to go and get water, the approach that this little girl has, you see her hopes being raised once more. She brings all the little children outside. She brings them all with their little pitchers. Now you do not have to worry. Water is definitely going to come now. My uncle Abbas has gone to get water. There is no way that we will not get water now. But there is only one condition I ask from you, that when my uncle Abbas brings water, first we will give it to Asghar, because Asghar is the youngest and he has not had any water. Abbas goes to Furat. He does not come back. The hopes of the girl is dashed. Once again her hopes are raised. When is this hope raised again? When Hussein takes Asghar and says, I am going to get water for Asghar. Again Sakina's hopes are raised. Perhaps now there will be water for Asghar. Again Hussein comes back. You will see that when Hussein comes back from the battlefield and says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, Sakina is the first one to run out of the khayma and say, Baba, did they give any water to Asghar? Hussein opens his abba and shows him what has happened to Asghar. Again her hopes are dashed once more. Again the girl's hope is raised again. This time Hussein goes to the battle. Hussein does not come back. Zuljana comes back. The first thing that Sakina does is she puts her hands on the horse's head. Zuljana, did they give any water to my Baba? Again there is no water for Sakina. Sakina is waiting for this water again and again. She does not know why Abbas is not coming back. She does not know why her father Hussein has not come back. We are told when the Kafilah leaves Karbala and they head towards Kufa and Sham, they stop at one point in the desert. When it is a very hot day, Sakina comes to her brother Sajjad and says, can I go and ask for some water? Imam Sajjad says to Sakina, you can ask for water, but they did not give water to your Asghar. I do not think they will give water to you. Oh Sakina, this is the same water you had taken and run to the battlefield to say, where is Asghar? He has not had any water. Sakina goes and asks for water. Shimr says to Sakina, daughter of Hussein, do you want some water? Sakina says, yes, I want some water. Shimr says, Sakina, before I give water to you, I must feed all the soldiers here. They must all get some water. You have to walk with me on the hot sands while I give water to the soldier. Sakina's hopes are raised. Once again the little girl thinks she will get water. Shimr gives water to every soldier. Every soldier drinks water. Sakina is following Shimr, waiting for water. Once the water has been given to all the soldiers, again Sakina's hopes are raised.
Again I will get water. Shimr says, Sakina, now the horses have to be given water before you get water. Again Sakina is waiting for water, but water is not being given to the daughter of Hussein. The horses are now given water one by one. Sakina is waiting for water. There is still no water for Sakina. When the horses have been given, now she asks for water. Now Shimr takes the water and spills it on the hot sands of Karbala. Daughter of Hussein, I did not give a drop to your father. Why will I give you? Bas azadaro azrajurukum ala Allah. This is the misery of Sakina. She lives in this hope and her hopes keep getting dashed. Mir Anis captures this in a few verses. He says, जब प्यास लगती रोके चचा को पुकारती, दुखते जो कान शाहे हुदा को पुकारती, आता न जब कोई तो खुदा को पुकारती, जीने से तंग हो के कज़ा को पुकारती, कहती थी न चचा न इमामे उमम रहे, रुलवाने को दूर रहे, रोने को हम रहे.
ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إلهي بحق محمد وأنت المحمود، وبحق علي وأنت الأعلى، وبحق فاطمة وأنت فاطر السماوات والأرض، وبحق الحسن وأنت المحسن، وبحق الحسين وأنت قديم الإحسان، وبحق تسبة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. Oh Allah, بحق محمد وعلي محمد, we ask you to accept our gathering here this night. Oh Allah, بحق محمد وعلي محمد, we ask you for maghfirah for our marhumin and for shifa of those who are ill. Oh Allah, we ask you for to hasten the repentance of our Imam. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم.